No one in the galaxy truly believed that humans had ever existed. To most alien races, the word human was nothing more than an old story told by explorers to entertain their crews during long journeys through the void. Some said they were wild beings who destroyed their own world. Others said they were too brave, too unpredictable, and the galaxy erased them because they refused to kneel to anyone. Over time, the idea of humans faded into legend. They became myths, creatures of the past like shadows that once burned bright and vanished before anyone could prove they were real. In the Galactic Union's records, humanity was listed as extinct, unverified origin. Even that record was written as a formality, more a joke than a fact. The Union had long moved on, spreading its influence across thousands of star systems ruled by dozens of intelligent species. Technology, order, and peace. That was the Union's pride. No one thought about the humans anymore. No one except a few historians who loved chasing old mysteries. One of them, a linguist from the planet Corvus Prime, spent decades studying fragments of lost transmissions from the outer void. These signals were broken, weak, and centuries old, but there was something strange about them. Patterns of sound and structure that didn't match any known alien language. For years, people laughed at his research. "You're chasing ghosts," they said. "Those are just cosmic echoes." But one night, everything changed. During a deep space scan near the edges of mapped space, a massive object appeared, larger than any known planet moving slowly through the darkness. It didn't respond to any hail, didn't match any Union registry, and didn't emit a known identification code. The first assumption was that it was an asteroid cluster, but when the sensors zoomed in, they saw symmetry, straight lines, metal plating, and repeating shapes that could only mean one thing. It was built. Someone, or something, had constructed it. The Union's Science Council called an emergency meeting. Images of the object floated in the air before them, a colossal structure, silent, motionless, with unknown markings across its surface. When the linguist looked closely, his hands began to tremble. He recognized the symbols. They were ancient letters and from a language forgotten for 1,000 years, he whispered, almost afraid to say it out loud. "These are human letters." The room went silent. For a moment, no one breathed. Then laughter broke out. "Impossible," said one of the admirals. "Humans are myths. Everyone knows that." But the linguist insisted. He showed old records, ancient writings, cross-references. The shapes matched perfectly. The admiral still didn't believe him, but the scientist did. Curiosity won over pride. A small exploration fleet was sent toward the coordinates of the object. They expected to find a derelict station or an abandoned satellite. Maybe a trap set by pirates. But what they found was far beyond anything they imagined. The object wasn't a single ship. It was a cluster. An enormous structure made up of hundreds of connected vessels all moving together as if they were part of one great organism. The fleet's sensors struggled to measure its size. It was bigger than any known battleship, larger even than the Union's capital stations. The outer hull was coated in dark alloy that reflected almost no light, making it nearly invisible against the void. As the alien fleet approached, they detected something chilling. Energy readings. Not old, decaying power like you'd find in wrecks. This was new, active, controlled. Who could have built this? Asked the fleet commander. There's no civilization this far out. Before anyone could answer, the object emitted a signal. It wasn't random. It wasn't noise. It was a transmission. Every ship in the fleet received it at once. A message written in the same ancient language the linguist had identified. The alien translators scrambled to decode it, and when the words finally appeared on their screens, silence filled the bridge. It said, "To the Galactic Union Command. We are returning," that was it. No threat, no greeting, just those 5 words. The fleet commander felt the blood drain from his face. He turned to his officers, who stared back at him with wide, fearful eyes. "Returning?" One whispered. "Who's returning?" The commander didn't answer. He didn't have to. Everyone knew what the message meant. The rumor spread like wildfire across the galaxy. News networks called it the signal from the dark. Scholars debated its origin. Some dismissed it as a trick, a false signal sent by scavengers or rebellious factions. But others remembered the old tales. The stories about a species that once challenged the galaxy's might and refused to kneel. Within days, the Galactic Union was in chaos. Every race had its own theory. Some were afraid, some were curious, and a few, the oldest among them, looked truly terrified. On the Union's capital world, the High Council met in secret. The air was tense, the lights dim. Representatives from dozens of species sat around a massive circular table. Holograms of the object floated in the center, showing its impossible size and the strange design that didn't match any known engineering pattern. An elderly counselor spoke first. If this message truly comes from humans, we must prepare for the worst. The old records describe them as a race of warriors, violent, unpredictable, but brilliant. If they've survived, we must assume they're stronger than before. Another representative scoffed. Myth or not, no species can survive isolation for 1,000 years. If these are humans, they're probably a handful of primitives clinging to dead ships. But not everyone agreed. The Union's intelligence officers had detected something new, faint traces of warp signatures across multiple sectors. The pattern was coordinated, strategic, and precise, not the movement of pirates, the movement of a fleet. Still, no one wanted to believe it. No one wanted to say the words, "Humans are coming back." In the following weeks, probes were sent to track the object. But every time they got close, their signals vanished. The last probe to transmit managed to send a single image, a metallic wall covered in deep engravings. One of the symbols on that wall was a blue circle with small white dots inside, stars, arranged in the pattern of an ancient flag. The linguist wept when he saw it. He knew what it meant. It was Earth's emblem, the one used by humans before they disappeared. As the news spread, the galaxy began to question everything it thought it knew. If humans were real, where had they been? Why return now? And what did they want? In the deepest corners of the galaxy, old veterans remembered stories told by their ancestors. Stories of human explorers who once traveled the stars in fragile metal ships, armed with courage rather than power. Those humans had built alliances, fought wars, and vanished without a trace. And now, after centuries of silence, something carrying their mark was moving again. Night after night, the linguist couldn't sleep. He sat before his console, staring at the signal, replaying the same 5 words over and over again. "We are returning." There was something haunting about the tone. Not angry, not desperate, but sure. It was the confidence of a race that knew exactly who they were and where they were going. For the first time in generations, the galaxy felt something it hadn't felt in centuries. Fear mixed with curiosity. The Galactic Union had long believed it controlled everything. Every route, every system, every law. But this message reminded them that there were still corners of the universe they didn't understand. Still powers they couldn't control. Some said the humans were ghosts. Some said they were conquerors reborn. Others whispered that they had simply been waiting, building strength in the darkness, watching the galaxy grow soft. No one knew the truth. Not yet. But one thing was certain, the myth of humanity had just become real again. The Galactic Union couldn't ignore the message any longer. 5 short words, "We are returning," had thrown the entire galaxy into confusion. At first, most leaders called it a hoax. They said no one could send a signal that powerful without the Union's network detecting its source. But deep down, many of them felt something they hadn't felt in years: unease. The Union had ruled the stars for centuries. They thought they had seen everything: war, peace, discovery, even extinction. But this message was different. It came from beyond mapped space, from a region that no species had ever explored and lived to tell about. The edge of known space, a place swallowed by silence. A special team of experts, soldiers, and scientists was gathered to investigate. The council didn't call it fear. They called it precaution. But everyone knew the truth. The Union had grown soft in its comfort. It didn't like surprises, and the possibility that human, the ancient, unpredictable species, might be alive was more than just surprising. It was terrifying. The fleet moved out quietly. No broadcasts, no public announcements. Only a few knew about the mission's true purpose. Their ships cut through the void, heading toward the coordinates where the signal had been detected. Days passed, then weeks. The space around them grew darker, emptier, colder. Even the stars seemed to thin out, as if afraid to shine in that part of the galaxy. Then the fleet's sensors picked up something. A faint pulse, rhythmic, deliberate. "Another signal?" the communications officer asked. The commander nodded. "Patch it through." At first it was just static. Then underneath the noise, a sound repeated, bound, slow and steady. It wasn't random. It was coded. The linguists began working on it immediately, comparing the patterns to every known communication system. The result came back with a chilling note. Structure resembles ancient human transmission formats. The commander didn't want to believe it. You mean to say this is actually human? The linguist hesitated. Sir, the structure matches old Terran emergency frequencies almost perfectly. Before they could discuss more, the static stopped. And then a voice, deep, calm, unmistakably human, filled the bridge. Unknown vessels, you are entering restricted space. Identify yourselves. Everyone froze. The commander swallowed hard. Did that come from the object? The technician checked his readings twice. Confirmed, sir. The signal source matches the structure we've been tracking. The commander took a deep breath and opened a channel. This is the Galactic Union's exploratory fleet. We come in peace. Please identify yourself. There was a pause. Then the voice replied, Your identification is not recognized. This region is under Terran jurisdiction. The crew exchanged confused looks. Terran jurisdiction? That word, Terran, was the ancient name for humanity's origin world. Earth. The commander tried again. If you are who we think you are, we request communication with your representatives. No answer. Instead, the giant object ahead of them began to move. What had seemed like a silent structure suddenly came alive with light. Thousands of small glows flickering across its hull. And then slowly, the structure separated into hundreds of smaller ships, each one perfectly aligned, forming a fleet so vast it blocked out the stars behind it. The Union fleet's sensors struggled to measure the power output. Their energy readings went off the scale. Every ship was armed, and each weapon system was far beyond anything the Union had seen before. The commander's voice shook as he gave the order. Hold position. Do not engage. The human voice spoke again, calm but commanding. You are trespassing in a restricted sector. Retreat immediately or be escorted out. The commander hesitated. We mean no harm, he said. We only wish to understand who you are. There was another pause. Then, almost as if the speaker was choosing their words carefully, the reply came. Understanding will come soon enough. Tell your council, humanity has returned. And just like that, the transmission ended. For a long moment, no one on the bridge moved. The only sound was the quiet hum of the engines. Then the communications officer whispered, They said humanity, not humans, humanity. That means there's more than one ship, more than one group. The commander stared at the dark screen ahead. No, he said softly. That means they're united. When the fleet returned to Union space, they brought with them every recording, every scan, every signal. And for the first time in centuries, the council listened without laughing. The evidence was undeniable. The fleet existed, and it was human. The news spread faster than light. Media across the galaxy exploded with headlines. The lost species found. Humans return from the void. The myths were real. At first, people were curious. They wanted to know what humans looked like, what they were like. Old paintings and digital art flooded the net. Some showing humans as gods, others as monsters. The truth was, no one really knew what to expect. But not everyone was curious. Some were afraid. The oldest races remembered the records. Ancient wars that humans fought not for conquest but for survival. Stories of how they refused to surrender, even when outnumbered 100-1. The Union's military began silent preparations. New alliances were discussed, old weapons reactivated. No one wanted war, but no one wanted to be unprepared either. Meanwhile, far from the council's polished halls, ordinary people began to whisper. What if they're coming back to reclaim what they lost? What if they're angry? But others said something different, something almost hopeful. What if they've come back to help us? For decades, the galaxy had been struggling. The Union claimed peace, but many systems lived under strict control. Freedom was rare. Exploration was limited. Trade was taxed heavily. Some species felt forgotten, pushed aside by the powerful. And now, they heard about a race that once valued freedom above all. The idea of humans returning gave them something they hadn't felt in years: hope. As the rumors grew, so did the sightings. Merchant ships near the outer sectors reported strange vessels, dark and fast, moving without sound or light. Some claimed these ships had the same blue insignia seen on the object from the probe's last transmission. A circle with white stars. Each report added more fuel to the mystery. Every species had their theory, but deep down everyone sensed the same truth. The humans were not hiding anymore. In the capital's grand hall, the council gathered again. The same hologram hovered between them, a massive projection of the unknown fleet. One of the councilors broke the silence. If this is truly humanity, why now? Why return after all this time? No one had an answer. But then the linguist, the same one who had first recognized the symbols, spoke quietly from the side of the room. Maybe they never left. Maybe they were waiting for the right moment. Everyone turned to him.
Waiting.
For what?
He met their gaze and said, "For the galaxy to forget them." Those words stayed in the air long after the meeting ended. That night, across dozens of worlds, people stood under alien skies and looked toward the stars. They wondered which one hid the humans. They wondered if, somewhere out there, ships carrying the same blood that once flowed on Earth were preparing to return. In a small communication station near the outer rim, a technician sat alone at his console. He had been monitoring space traffic for years and nothing ever happened on his watch. But tonight his screen flickered. A signal came through, faint but clear. It wasn't from the Union network. It wasn't from any known beacon. It was human. He leaned closer, heart pounding, and listened. The message repeated over and over again. "This is the Terran Restoration Fleet. To all species of the Union, prepare for contact." He played it again, just to be sure. There was no mistake. It was real. The man stared at the stars outside the window. The legends weren't legends anymore. They were real. They were organized. And they were coming home. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy wasn't the same. The myths had spoken, and everyone was listening. The galaxy had not been this tense in centuries. The Galactic Union was on full alert. Every ship, every station, every defense network was active. People didn't talk about trade or politics anymore. They talked about the humans. Every day, new reports arrived. Distant outposts detected massive ships passing through uncharted regions. The energy readings were unlike anything seen before. Even the most advanced scanners couldn't fully read the technology. It was as if the humans had built machines that refused to be understood. The Union's high command was desperate to make contact again. They didn't want war. They wanted to know what humanity wanted. Why now? Why after all this time? So they sent another fleet. Not a small one this time. A full diplomatic convoy protected by warships but carrying the flag of peace. Their mission was simple: to speak, to reason, and to understand. The convoy entered the same sector where the first signal had come from. The stars around them were dim, swallowed by the vast emptiness of space. No planets, no moons, only silence. Then the sensors started flashing red. "Multiple contacts approaching," said the navigator. "How many?" asked the commander. The reply came with hesitation. "Too many to count." One by one, dark shapes emerged from the void. Huge ships, each one larger than the Union's main battleships. Their hulls were covered in black armor with faint blue markings that glowed like breathing light. The fleet moved in perfect coordination, forming a massive wall that filled the radar screens. The commander tried to open communication. "This is the Galactic Union Peace Fleet. We request to speak with your representatives." No response. The silence lasted for several long minutes. Then the static on the main channel cleared and a calm human voice spoke. "Identify yourselves. You are entering Terran-protected space." The sound of that voice sent chills across every ship. It was clear, steady, and human, unmistakably human. The commander replied carefully, "We come in peace. We seek only communication." Another pause. The human voice returned, firm but controlled. "Your peace is noted. Maintain position. Do not advance. The fleet followed the order." No one wanted to take a risk. As they waited, the humans appeared on the main screen for the first time. A video transmission came through, grainy at first, then sharp. Faces appeared, human faces. Their expressions were calm, their uniforms simple, marked with a single emblem. A circle of white stars on a blue background. No one spoke on the Union side. They just stared. These weren't the wild, primitive beings from the old myths. These were disciplined, focused, organized humans, people who had seen much and survived more. The lead officer from the human fleet finally spoke. You have questions. We will answer some of them. But first you will leave this sector. The Union commander hesitated. We only wish to understand. Are you truly from Earth? The human's eyes softened for a moment. Earth is where it began. But what you call Earth no longer exists. What remains is us. The channel went silent again. The Union commander didn't know how to reply. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders, but he had none. The human continued. You built a union. You created peace. We watched from afar. But peace built on control is not peace at all. That sentence hit like a wave. The aliens on the bridge exchanged worried glances. The humans had been watching, and for how long? We have returned, the voice said, not to conquer, but to reclaim our place among the stars. We remember what was lost. We remember who turned away when we fell. The last words carried something deeper, not anger, but memory. A reminder of betrayal long forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. The commander finally spoke. If you seek peace, we will welcome it. But many worlds fear what they do not understand. Help us to explain. The human on the screen looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then let them see. The next instant, hundreds of lights appeared around the Terran fleet. The human armada moved aside just enough to reveal what was behind them, a vast line of ships extending beyond sight. Some were warships, some were transport carriers, and some were enormous colony vessels. Their numbers were unimaginable. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Every ship bore the same insignia. Everyone moved with perfect coordination, silent and confident. This, the human said, is the Terran Restoration Fleet. We are all that remains of the old colonies, united, prepared, and alive. We do not seek your permission to exist. The screen flickered and the image of the human officer disappeared. The communication ended. The Union commander sat back in his chair, unable to speak. He knew what he had seen would change the galaxy forever. The report sent back to the Council caused chaos. Some believed humanity's return was a blessing, a chance to learn from a civilization that had survived destruction. Others believed it was a threat unlike any other. For weeks, debates filled the Council chambers. Some members demanded immediate military preparation. Others called for diplomacy. No one could agree. But deep down, the truth was clear. The humans weren't asking for anyone's approval. They were simply back. Meanwhile, more fleets began to appear across distant sectors. They didn't attack. They didn't invade. They simply positioned themselves quietly at key points across the galaxy, as if drawing invisible borders. When questioned, their response was always the same. You are entering Terran space. No threats. No declarations of war. Just calm certainty. It was as if they already knew their place, and the galaxy was only just beginning to understand it. Inside the Union's intelligence centers, analysts worked day and night to study the human transmissions. The data they collected was shocking. The humans had technology that defied understanding. Energy fields that could absorb laser fire, propulsion systems that operated without visible exhaust, communication networks that spanned thousands of light years instantly. It was clear now. They hadn't been hiding in weakness. They had been preparing in silence. Rumors spread that the humans had built entire cities inside moving worlds, giant space habitats capable of sustaining millions. Some said they had even created a second Earth somewhere far beyond the edge of the galaxy. No one knew the truth, and the humans weren't offering explanations. They spoke only when necessary, and every word they said carried the weight of confidence, and the kind of confidence that comes from surviving the impossible. Across the galaxy, people began to see humans differently. They were no longer myths. They were proof that endurance could outlast extinction. One night, as the Union's central world orbited quietly under its twin moons, the Council received another message. It was short, simple, and direct, the kind of message only humans would send. The age of silence is over. We will meet your Council soon. The words spread like lightning. Every world prepared. Every government froze. The humans had spoken again, and this time it was not a warning. It was a promise. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy waited in silence. The legends were coming not as ghosts, not as stories, but as living proof that strength, unity, and resilience could never be erased. No one knew what that meeting would bring: peace, alliance, or fear. But one thing was certain. The humans had returned to the stars, and the galaxy was finally remembering why their name had once echoed in every story. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as survivors. For many years, the galaxy believed humans were gone forever. Old stories said they destroyed themselves, fought endless wars, and burned their world to ashes. Others said they tried to reach for the stars and failed, leaving nothing but ruins and silence behind. But when the Terran Armada appeared, everything changed. The myths turned into truth. And for the first time, the galaxy began to wonder, what had really happened to them? How had a species once thought extinct built an armada that could shake the stars? The Galactic Union demanded answers. They wanted to know how humans had survived when even the most powerful civilizations had vanished over time. But the humans did not explain everything. They spoke little, choosing their words carefully. When the first official meeting took place, it wasn't on a grand planet or inside a council chamber. It happened aboard a massive Terran vessel, a ship so large it seemed to carry its own horizon. The Union's representatives were nervous as they stepped inside. The corridors were quiet. The air smelled clean like new metal and filtered air. The walls were simple but strong, built for function, not luxury. Everything about the humans' technology felt efficient, focused, nothing wasted. And then they saw them. Humans standing tall, calm, and serious. Their eyes held a look that was hard to describe, something between sorrow and pride. They weren't cold, but there was a distance in their gaze, like people who had seen too much and survived it all. One of the Union diplomats tried to break the silence. "We believed your kind was gone," he said softly. The human representative nodded slowly. "We almost were," he said. "But almost isn't the same as gone." That single sentence carried more weight than any speech. The diplomat hesitated, then asked, "How did you survive? What happened to your homeworld?" The human looked down for a moment, as if remembering something painful. Then he said quietly, "Earth died long ago, but humans didn't." And then the story came out. Centuries ago, before the galaxy even knew their name, humanity had already reached the stars. They were curious, restless, always pushing further. But their greatest strength, their hunger to explore, became their weakness. As their population grew and resources faded, nations turned against each other. Wars began, not for land but for survival. The skies burned, oceans boiled, and the surface of Earth became a graveyard of cities. Most believed that was the end. Billions were lost. The planet was dying, but not everyone gave up. Deep underground, in hidden stations and bunkers, small groups of humans built shelters. They gathered scientists, engineers, and anyone who still believed in rebuilding. They refused to let their species disappear. While the surface burned, they worked in silence. Decade by decade, they developed machines that could survive the void. They built ships not for war, but for escape. When the last storm swept across the dying planet, a fleet of massive vessels lifted off from what remained of Earth's soil. They called them arks. Inside were the last survivors of the human race, farmers, builders, thinkers, children. They left behind a broken world, but carried with them everything that made them human: hope, stubbornness, and the will to start again. For centuries, those arks drifted between stars. Many were lost to time. Some were destroyed by cosmic storms. Others vanished into the black, never to be heard from again. But a few made it. They reached distant systems where no other species lived. There they built new colonies on barren moons, inside hollow asteroids, and in great floating cities. Life wasn't easy. They had no allies, no trade, and no safety. Every day was survival, but that struggle shaped them. They became stronger, smarter, united by a single goal: to make sure humanity would never fade again. As generations passed, those colonies grew. They learned to create energy from stars, harvest water from frozen comets, and build ships that could move faster than light. They built machines that repaired themselves, cities that could move through space, and technology that even the most advanced alien civilizations could not match. They never called themselves rulers or conquerors. They called themselves the Terran Restoration Fleet. Their mission wasn't domination, it was remembrance, to restore what humanity once stood for. But they didn't return to the galaxy immediately. They watched. From the edge of known space, they studied the Union, its governments, its laws, its control. They saw a galaxy that had forgotten what freedom meant, A galaxy where peace came at the cost of obedience. They waited, not out of fear but patience. They wanted the right time, the right moment, when the galaxy was ready to see them again, and when that time came, they sent the message. We are returning. Back in the meeting, the Union diplomats listened in silence. The room felt heavy, as if the story itself carried the weight of centuries. The human representative continued, "We don't come to rule you. We don't come to destroy what you've built. We come to remind you of something, that strength is not in control. It's in the freedom to stand even when everything falls." The diplomat asked quietly, "And what do you want from the Union?" The human looked up, his eyes calm but firm. "Recognition. Nothing more. Humanity is not your myth. We exist. We will take our place among the stars. Beside you, not beneath you." There was silence for a long time. The aliens in the room didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to them like that, not with threat but with conviction. After the meeting, the Union's representatives returned home. But the story they carried spread across every world faster than light. People began to talk. Ordinary citizens, workers, scientists, all began to ask questions. How had humans done it? How did they survive when no one helped them? How did they return so strong, so united? The answers inspired something powerful. The galaxy began to see humanity not as monsters or myths, but as proof that even when everything is lost, hope can still rebuild from ashes. In the following months, Terran ships appeared near trade routes not as invaders but as observers. They helped stranded vessels, repaired broken satellites, and rescued lost crews. Slowly, the fear began to fade, but the Union's leaders remained uneasy. They didn't trust the silence, the calm, the quiet strength the humans carried. They had seen powerful empires rise and fall, but never one that survived through patience. In private meetings, the Union's admirals whispered that the Terran fleet was too large, too organized. They feared that if humanity ever chose war, no one could stop them, but the humans never attacked. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough to change the balance of power. Every planet, every commander, every citizen now knew humanity was watching. In time, the humans shared fragments of their history, ancient recordings, images of their ruined world, and the faces of those who built the first arcs. The galaxy watched in silence as they saw what true endurance looked like. It wasn't just technology that brought the humans back. It was will. It was heart. The galaxy finally understood that humanity had not been destroyed by war. They had been transformed by it. They were no longer the same race that once fought among themselves. They had learned unity the hard way through loss and pain. They were the children of a world that died, carrying the memory of their home in every heartbeat. When the recordings ended, one message appeared on every screen. We were forgotten. We forgave that, but we will never forget who we are. That message spread across the stars, and for the first time, the galaxy didn't see humanity as danger. They saw them as a reminder, a reflection of what strength truly meant. From that day, the galaxy was no longer the same. The myths were over. The truth was clear. Humanity didn't just survive extinction. They outlived it, and somewhere beyond the stars, on ships carrying the dreams of their ancestors, the humans continued to move forward, calm, patient, and unbroken, because even after losing everything, they had learned one eternal truth. You can destroy a world, but you can never destroy the will of those who refuse to disappear. When the humans first appeared, they came quietly. No grand speech, no warning, only signals that pulsed through deep space, calm and measured. But this time, what arrived was far greater than anything the galaxy had ever seen. It began with lights in the dark. Thousands of small dots appeared beyond the edge of known space, too distant to identify but too organized to ignore. At first, the Galactic Union thought it was a natural event, maybe a meteor cluster or a cosmic storm. But then the signals came again, precise, repeating, unmistakably intelligent, and then they saw them, the Terran Armada. It wasn't just a fleet, it was a moving city of stars. Massive ships stretched across light years, their metallic surfaces reflecting starlight like mirrors. Every vessel carried its own purpose, some shaped like spears, others like shields, others like enormous floating citadels. No two ships looked exactly the same, yet all shared one thing, the unmistakable mark of human design. Strong, practical, built not for beauty, but for survival. The sight stunned everyone. Worlds across the galaxy watched as screens lit up with the same view, thousands of Terran ships moving in perfect formation, calm and steady, like a tide returning to the shore after centuries away. The Union sent out probes to study the fleet. But before they could even approach, the probes shut down. Not destroyed, just switched off. The message was clear. We see you. You don't need to come closer. Inside the council chambers of the Union, panic spread quietly. Commanders, ministers, and admirals argued in hushed tones. No one wanted to start a war, but no one wanted to seem weak either. They had all heard the stories. Humans were myths, survivors of a lost world, ghosts that learned how to fight stars. Now those ghosts had returned. But unlike invaders, the Terran ships didn't attack. They simply took position at the edge of Union space, silent, patient, as if waiting for an invitation that no one was brave enough to send. For days, transmissions filled the skies. Every signal carried the same message, short and calm. This is the Terran Armada. We seek no war. We return as equals. It was said in hundreds of languages, carefully translated to every known tongue so no one could misunderstand. Still, the galaxy trembled. Trade ships stopped moving. Civilian transports stayed grounded. Even pirates, who once ruled the empty routes, vanished into hiding. Everyone was watching the same thing. The humans standing at the border of the known galaxy, with the quiet power of those who didn't need to prove themselves. Then something unexpected happened. The Terrans began helping. A small colony near the border sent a distress call. Their main reactor had failed and they were days away from freezing. No one from the Union responded. It was too risky to go near the Terran ships. But one Terran vessel broke formation and moved toward the colony. Union satellites captured the entire thing. The human ship slowed, extended what looked like massive mechanical arms and connected power directly to the colony's systems. Within minutes, lights came back on. The people were saved, and then, without asking for thanks or attention, the ship turned and went back to its place among the fleet. That one act changed everything. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. The humans saved them. They didn't attack. They came to help. These words echoed through every communication channel. Every world, every heart, even the Union Council, usually divided, went silent. There was no denying it. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as guardians of balance. Soon more incidents followed. Terran ships rescued stranded miners. They repaired satellites, towed disabled freighters, and restored old navigation stations that hadn't worked in decades. Everywhere they went, they left no demand, no claim, no flag. Just quiet actions that spoke louder than any words. And still no one knew how many of them there were. Every time someone tried to count, more ships appeared. It was said that the Armada stretched so far that it circled stars unseen by the Union. But behind all that calm, there was something deeper, something the humans hadn't revealed yet. They had a purpose. While the Union speculated and guessed, the humans were preparing for something larger. In their central flagship, a massive vessel named Horizon, the leaders of the Terran fleet gathered. They didn't speak of war or conquest. They spoke of rebuilding. Their mission was simple but powerful: to restore lost colonies, reconnect old roots, and bring the forgotten parts of the galaxy back into the fold. The humans didn't want to rule. They wanted to fix what had been broken during the Union's long rule of silence and control. To the outside galaxy, they looked like a mysterious army. But to those within the Armada, it was a community, millions of people working together. Farmers growing food in space farms, engineers maintaining life support systems, teachers and artists keeping their culture alive. Generations had grown up aboard these ships, never setting foot on a planet, yet still carrying the dream of Earth in their hearts. One evening aboard the Horizon, the stars outside were calm, and the crew gathered near the main observation deck. A young officer stood beside an older one and said quietly, "Do you think they'll ever understand us?" The older man smiled faintly. "Maybe not now, but one day they will. We didn't come back to scare them. We came back so no one forgets that we're still here, and that we're not alone in this galaxy. That was the spirit of humanity. Simple, quiet, but unbreakable. Then came the day the Union finally sent a message back. After weeks of debate, fear, and confusion, they agreed to speak directly to the humans. A transmission was sent to the horizon. Terran Fleet, this is the Galactic Union. We acknowledge your presence. We seek peaceful dialogue. The response came seconds later. Acknowledged. We are ready. It was the moment the galaxy had been waiting for. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space station between both sides. Reporters, drones, and observers from hundreds of species watched live as the first human and alien delegations faced each other after centuries of silence. When the human representatives stepped forward, the room fell silent. They looked different from the legends, not monsters, not warriors, just people. Tired, calm, with eyes that had seen generations drift by among the stars. The leader of the Union delegation spoke first, voice trembling slightly. We welcome the return of humanity. The galaxy believed you were gone. The human representative nodded slowly. We were gone, but not lost. That one line spread through the galaxy like fire. It became a message of hope, not just for humans, but for every species that had ever struggled, ever felt forgotten, ever lost something. The two sides began to talk. Not just about politics or territory, but about history. What happened after Earth fell, how the Terrans rebuilt themselves, and what they hoped to do now. Days turned into weeks, and trust began to grow. The Union slowly opened its borders to Terran ships. Trade resumed, and for the first time in centuries, humans walked again on alien worlds, not as invaders but as guests. Children from other planets looked at them with curiosity. Some even asked if the stories about Earth were true, and the humans smiled, telling them about blue oceans, green forests, and a sky that once held the dreams of billions. The galaxy started to remember that legends don't always belong to the past. Sometimes they come back, not to rule but to remind. But deep within the Armada, something else was being prepared. Hidden beyond the main fleet, a new project was underway, something called the Genesis Initiative. It was humanity's greatest secret, their plan to rebuild a new Earth. Not the old one. Not a copy, but a new home where all species could live together, a symbol of peace built not on power, but on shared hope. That dream was still far away, but for the first time, it felt possible. As the Terran Armada drifted quietly through the stars, its ships glowing softly against the void, a feeling spread through the galaxy, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, humanity's return wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning, and somewhere, beyond the silence of deep space, a small voice echoed through the stars. They thought we were gone. But we are only getting started. The galaxy had changed. For centuries, humans had been nothing more than myths, stories whispered in dimly lit halls, symbols of what once was and would never return. But now their presence was real. The Terran Armada no longer hid in the shadows. It moved through the galaxy like a reminder of everything that endurance could mean. Their ships had become a familiar sight. Once feared, now they inspired respect. Wherever they went, people stopped to watch. Not because they were afraid, but because they were curious. The humans had brought something the galaxy had long forgotten, the feeling of hope. But humanity's return was not just about survival. It was about rebuilding what was lost, not only for themselves, but for everyone. Inside the flagship horizon, the leaders of the Terran fleet gathered again. Around them, holographic maps of the galaxy shimmered. Bright dots marked colonies they had helped, stations they had repaired, worlds they had restored. Each one was a sign that the galaxy was healing, little by little. The human commander looked at the map quietly and said, "We've rebuilt enough to stand. But standing isn't the goal. We have to help others stand with us." That was the new mission. Humanity didn't just want to return. They wanted to lift others up too. And so the Terran fleet began a massive project that would change the course of history, the Genesis Initiative. It was a plan to build a new world, a living planet, not just for humans but for every species willing to live together in peace. The idea was bold, maybe even impossible. But so was everything humanity had ever done. Work began in the quiet corner of the galaxy, near a star system forgotten by the Union. The humans called it Solara. It had no life, no cities, just empty worlds circling a gentle yellow sun. But to the humans it looked familiar, calm, warm, and full of promise. The project was kept secret at first. Thousands of Terran ships arrived, carrying engineers, builders, scientists, and farmers. Massive machines began shaping the land, creating oceans, mountains, and forests. Artificial weather systems brought rain, wind, and life. Day by day, the barren planet began to change. It was slow work, years of planning, building, and waiting. But humanity had mastered patience long ago. As the planet grew more alive, word began to spread. At first, only a few knew. Then more came to see it for themselves. Not just humans, but beings from dozens of different species. Some didn't believe it was real until they set foot on the soft new soil and saw rivers running under golden light. The humans welcomed them all. "This place is not ours alone," they said. "It belongs to everyone who believes in a second chance." And so the first city was built, Haven. It wasn't filled with tall towers or shining domes. It was simple, clean, and open. Streets were wide. The air smelled of green trees and sea wind, and children, human and alien, ran through fields together. For the first time in centuries, there was no talk of war or power. Only peace. The Galactic Union watched this closely. Some feared it. Others admired it. But eventually they realized something important. The humans weren't trying to build an empire. They were building a home. That realization changed everything. Soon other species began sending ships offering help. Some brought plants from their worlds. Others brought art, knowledge, or just people willing to start fresh. Humanity accepted them all. Every new addition made Haven grow, not just in size but in meaning. It became a living symbol of unity, proof that the galaxy could be more than divided borders and endless politics. Back aboard the horizon, the commander often watched the planet from orbit. He would see its lights shining below, soft and peaceful. "It's not perfect," he said once to his officers, "but perfection was never our goal. Survival with hope, that's enough." The message of humanity began spreading again, not through power but through example. People across the galaxy began to believe that maybe they didn't need to fear differences anymore. Maybe they could rebuild too. And quietly, the humans continued their work. They rebuilt lost space stations, revived dying colonies, and restored ancient archives of forgotten knowledge. Everywhere they went, they left something better behind. Even the Union, once proud and distant, began to change. They started sending young cadets to learn from human engineers, scientists, and historians. Slowly, the walls between species began to fade. But humanity never forgot where they came from. Every year on the same day, the entire Terran fleet stopped. All communication paused, all engines silenced. The humans called it Remembrance Day. On that day, every ship displayed a single image, a picture of the old Earth, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Their lost home. No one spoke during that hour. They just looked. Some cried. Others smiled. But all felt the same thing, pride. Because even though Earth was gone, its spirit lived on in them, in their ships, and now, in the world they had created anew. The galaxy began calling them the Keepers of Hope. The name spread, and soon every young student in distant schools knew the story. The humans who were once legends, who survived destruction, who returned not with anger, but with wisdom. In time, the Galactic Union and the Terran fleet signed a new charter together, the Pact of Haven. It declared that no species would ever again be abandoned to extinction, and that all knowledge, technology, and discoveries would be shared freely for the good of all. For the first time in galactic history, true unity felt real. Decades passed. The Terran fleet no longer needed to prove itself. The galaxy no longer doubted their existence. And the humans? They simply continued doing what they had always done, moving forward, building, learning, and dreaming. Children grew up in Haven learning both the Union's history and Earth's forgotten stories. They painted stars, built small model ships, and dreamed of exploring beyond the known galaxy. And in every storybook there was one line written at the end: "We thought they were gone, but they never left. They just became stronger." One night, as the twin moons of Haven rose over the horizon, The old human commander stood by the window of his quarters aboard the Horizon. He looked down at the glowing world below and whispered softly, "Maybe this is what Earth was always meant to become." Beside him, a younger officer replied, "Do you think the galaxy will remember us?" The commander smiled gently. "They already do. But not because we returned, because we showed them that even when everything ends, something new can begin." Silence filled the room. Outside, the stars looked endless, calm, and alive. As time went on, the humans began to spread further again, not in conquest, but in exploration. They built new ships, faster and stronger, not for war, but for discovery. One of those ships left haven quietly one day, carrying a small group of humans and aliens together. Their destination was unknown, a region beyond mapped space where even the oldest charts ended. Before leaving, they sent a final message to the galaxy. "We go not to escape, but to learn. To find what lies beyond. To see if others are waiting just as we once waited to be found. It was humanity's way, and to always move forward." And so, they went into the dark, into the unknown, carrying the same flame that once burned on Earth's dying soil. Centuries later, people would still tell the story of the humans who were once thought to be myths, of their return, their strength, their heart, and of the world they built not to rule but to remind everyone what it means to rise again. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon was never their ships, their technology, or their power. It was their spirit, the quiet, unshakable belief that no matter how far they fell, they could always find a way to stand again. And as the galaxy turned slowly under the light of countless stars, the words of an old Terran saying echoed through space, "We are the children of a world that died. But as long as we remember its light, the universe will never be dark again."